Do you want a glass? Do you want a glass?
Yeah. And you know, families. So use the feeling there's music. There's another clip later on that we have for, and it often comes in. I mean, you would be surprised the kinds of things that you know, get turned down. You know, if it's a sex scene, if it's a particular, you know, type of violent scene or something.
Do you have an example of something that really was turned down from someone?
Well, no, because I always get it. Well.
We'll leave that. But I want to talk.
Yeah.
I want to talk a little bit about Tarantino. How did you start working with him?
I met Quentin, and he's the reason I'm a music supervisor. Basically, I didn't even know this was a job, and it's not a very. I mean, people say, "Oh, what kind of school should I go to learn how to music supervise?" And I don't have a really good answer for that because I kind of fell into this job. I was friends with an actor, Tim Roth. He was one of my pals, and I met Quentin through Tim when they were working together on Reservoir Dogs, and we just kind of hit it off talking about music. And at the time, there was a music supervisor working on Reservoir Dogs, and she needed someone to work for her, and I needed a job, so that it worked out wonderfully.
What's his process? Does he know the songs he wants in the script when he comes to you, or do you guys collaborate on which ones?
Quentin, every director is different. Every director tells a story differently, and and Quentin is the type of director. The kind of stories he wants to tell often have specific clothing, specific visuals, specific music. I mean, that's the kind of story he likes to tell. So yes, a lot of times when he is beginning writing a script, for instance, for Jackie Brown, he'll go into his record room in his house. He has a record room that's like set up like a record store with vinyl in different sections, and he'll go to his R&B section, you know, and start listening to R&B to come up with the vibe and soul of the story. And what I will do is, I mean, sometimes it's really kind of fun because I'll go in and sit down and he'll like tell me the story and then stop and play a piece of music and, you know, let it play. And then he'll continue the story and switch albums and stuff. So that's a lot of times how we'll start. But, you know, I mean, so that is why I have such a passion to make sure that he gets his vision, the movie that's in his head. I want to make sure that he can make the movie that's in his head. I want you guys to see the movie that's in his head rather than something that had to be a compromise that he couldn't get. So there's that. But if also I've been helpful in choosing music and, you know, filling in the blanks where he has set the palette for things and being able to.
And other directors don't have any idea what they want really.
Yes.
And how do you work with them?
Well, that's kind of fun. I mean, that actually gets fun too when a director starts a project without an idea of music. Then I'm able to help them come to the decision. The way I approach the job is film is a director's medium, and I want to support the director and help them tell their story. So I'll help them come to a choice, you know. So and if it's a very broad target to hit, then I'll start there. I'll take, for instance, a scene and start with 5 different choices in very different styles that I've tried to picture, that work to picture, and show it to them so that they can help hone in on their style and their choice. it's more organic that way, and I really I enjoy working that way with directors. So it's kind of,
I want to show a new clip, Tarantino, because this one I think illustrates how you work as a detective. I was talking about how you're in there finding rights from things that people don't even think are able to be found anymore. So this is from Jackie Brown. It's Roy Ayers' Vitrone's theme.
Mm.
So what's the story behind that one?
Okay, and that was, Jackie Brown was one of the first times Quentin used a score from another movie. And the vibe of Jackie Brown was soul and R&B, but it also was blaxploitation style. And so when we were on the, and this is the other thing, is that Quentin likes to make last-minute decisions, too, which makes my life incredibly interesting. So we were on the mixing stage.
Not surprising.
We were on the mixing stage for Jackie Brown, and he thought, you know what, because that scene didn't have any music. And he thought, you know what, I want to put some music here. And he had been listening to the soundtrack to Coffee, which is a lovely score by Roy Ayers. Cool score. And he wanted to use this piece of music. As is the case, I'll go and try and get the rights from the publisher. And the publisher said, no. I said, what? No, why? And they said, because there's another writer on this piece. We haven't been able to find it, and we don't have any current information on this writer. Last information we had was like from the 70s in Manhattan. So I can't take no for an answer, especially when it's this kind of a situation. So I started, and this was in 1996, before we really had Google and we had, internet searches. So I used the phone book to, last known address was Manhattan, New York City. I knew he was a jazz musician. I knew his name was Harry Whitaker, and he was in Roy Ayers' band. So I started calling all the jazz clubs in Manhattan and New York City, and that I could find. And I found him on maybe the 5th or 6th club I called, and they said, oh yeah, Harry's coming in tomorrow night. I said, I don't have his phone number, please have him call me immediately. So with seconds to spare, I was able to find him, get his approval to use the song, hook him back up actually with his publishing company so that he could start getting revenue. You're
kind of helping everyone there.
Yeah, I mean, I've often thought, the way that Quentin uses actors whose careers get kind of revived by his use of him in the movies, in the same way, it's sort of in the music as well. So.
And you started yourself in a punk band. You weren't.
Yes.
If you were
You've never heard of us. So.
What was it called?
It was called Invisible Order. It was the 80s, so.
Now everyone will Google Invisible Order. No. But if you had that band today and you wanted to get in touch with Mary Ramos, music supervisor, and get your song into a movie, what would you recommend?
The one thing that I've often said to bands starting out is, I know it sounds kind of unoriginal, but to get the attention of music supervisors, a lot of times it's good to do a cover of a well-known song and do an original cover, do a cool version of it. Because a lot of times when supervisors are looking for something for an ad or for a television show, they need to find something that's familiar yet has a spin on it, has a new spin on it. And so we'll look for, cover songs. And that's a good way to like sort of throw your bait into the water, to have us find your band and start listening to your original music as well. That's one way. And
would you have an example of a good cover from a band that you?
Yeah, there was one that I used in a movie, a horror, well, it was a thriller called A Walk Among the Tombstones with Liam Neeson. I used a cover of Black Hole Sun that was done by a female, and it was sort of an ethereal female vocal version of it. I think, did I bring it? Did I bring a copy of it?
No, I don't think so.
Oh, okay. I did. But anyways, so that was a one example.
Oh, cool. So that's what you should, but covers, I mean, that must cost something as well. I mean,
it costs something to license them, yes. Right, yeah. But I mean, it's an introduction, basically. Mm-hmm. It's a bait, kind of, for getting people to notice your band. That's, so that's what I would.
I know that you were one of the first people to find or use John Legend.
Oh, yeah.
What's the story behind?
Oh, my God. And I even told him, oh, you have a really nice voice. John Legend, I was working on a movie called Be Cool with a director, F. Gary Gray, and it was a movie that was about the music industry, and it was, it was a farce, but it was, and one of the storylines was John Travolta's character finds a young singer who's also a songwriter, and she's got this original style, and so one of the challenges was finding, and of course, you have a scene in the script where, all the characters are listening to this girl sing, and it's the most amazing song ever, so no pressure, right? I mean, when you write a scene like that in a script, you really have to find, somebody, an amazing piece of music. So I sought out the help of will.i.am from the Black Eyed Peas and from John Legend, and they wrote a really cool ballad for this girl to sing called Believer. And it was before John Legend had, broken out into his solo career. He'd done, he'd worked a little bit with Kanye, but yeah.
So you're picking them and helping both sides, both the movies with their music and the artists.
Yeah.
To grow. Yeah. I want to go to a new clip because this one you have said is your most challenging project. So I'm interested in hearing why. It's from Kill Bill, Santa Esmeralda. Don't let me be misunderstood.
Oh yeah.
What was?
I love that scene.
Yeah.
And what I can say is, can you imagine that scene without that song?
No.
Yeah, I mean, and it almost didn't happen. That song was absolutely unclearable. They were in a stalemate. The band was in a stalemate with a long-standing, like over 10 years long, legal battle over something to do with the rights to the song, and the lead singer was the key to to making that all happen. And it was Leroy Gomez and the and Santa Esmeralda. And I had to find Leroy Gomez somehow. I mean, the publisher said, no, you can't have it. And the record company said, no, don't even pursue this. And you don't tell me that. So I started, and this I did have the very rudimentary internet searches. So I started with phone directories. I started with copyright search, last known address, and then I started searching obituaries. And Gomez, yeah, that's how I found him. I mean, really? Gomez is is a good name to start with because there's not a ton. So I knew it was in the Massachusetts area, so I kind of tracked it down through a obituary, and I found his father's obituary, and I tracked down his mother, and his mother gave me Leroy's. He had since moved to France, and so she gave me his cell phone number in France. So I called him up out of the blue, and helped him work out a solution to their legal battle, and he and Leroy and his wife were my dates to the Kill Bill Volume 1 premiere. It was pretty cool. I saw him he got to meet Lucy Liu and say, "You're amazing."
Well, let's talk a little bit about that, because you're sort of a both right brain and left brain person. I mean, some people are either creative or into the sort of whole difficult rights clearance thing. But what is the most difficult rights you ever cleared, or most expensive?
Oh, the most expensive. That's kind of a hard one.
And how much is it? I have no idea what.
Oh, I was going to say, we were talking about this. I worked on a movie, I was the music coordinator on a movie called Reality Bites. Ben Stiller directed it, and he wanted a character to semi-sing the first 4 notes of the Dragnet television theme song, which is, it's dun, 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 4 notes. And this was in 1994, so this is $1994. Those 4 notes were going to cost $12,000 for somebody to just do that. So, and now, of course, it's probably way more expensive. So that's just an indication of what music rights are. There's two different things, obviously, you have to pay for when you want to license a song. If you just want a character to sing it and you never hear the recording, then you just clear the composition rights, the sync rights. But if you want to use both the composition and the master recording, then you have to go to the record company and clear the master rights. So there's 2 sides to pay for, and oftentimes they complete for a very large sum.
Paid for in perpetuity, forever?
Yes, ideally, especially for films, I clear things for worldwide in perpetuity rights in all media, and including hereafter devised media, because you never know. I mean, I've been doing this for over 20 years, and video cassettes turned into, it makes me sound incredibly old, but you do have to be prepared for future media.
Right. Talking about that, how has the industry changed? You've been doing this for over 20 years, and I mean, just in terms of what's happened with the internet and iTunes, and how has it changed for you? Is it better or is it worse? Well,
it's a little bit of both, actually. One thing that's better is it's made independent music more available, more readily available. We all, I think everybody here has playlists of things that we know that we're the only ones that have it, and we found it through, I think that's amazing, and that's kind of special about what's happened. But one thing that obviously, everybody talks about it is, I think digital music doesn't have the same sound for sure. It's kind of, but it also, I remember when iTunes started, and I wish I had had a voice at the time, because I think they should have kept it album only. I think it's killed the album, which kind of sucks, because I used to love having an album and finding the B-side and playing the B-side, and that's often, we wouldn't have a Quentin Tarantino if you didn't have albums and have B-sides. So it's a little bit of that. I have children now who don't, who only know one song by an artist, and they're my kids, and they shouldn't be like that. But they've been taught by society to, culture to.
Are you still a vinyl person? Is your
yes,
house filled with vinyl?
Yes, I am still a vinyl person, and as a matter of fact, for the Hateful Eight. One thing that we very much focused on first was releasing a vinyl album. We worked with Jack White's record label, Third Man, and put out a vinyl compilation of the score and the music in the film, and then we also worked with Decca to put out vinyl. Vinyl was incredibly important for this particular soundtrack release.
But how many songs do you have on your iTunes?
Oh my God,
know?
I have, and also external hard drives I've had, and that's digital music.
Yeah.
I've lost thousands of songs when I've, unfortunately dropped my hard drive or something. So the number is kind of, I have a lot. I have a lot of music, and it's weird stuff too. It's so funny. If you want me to, show you my playlist, I was telling you I have like yodeling. I have, I have things that I've used for various projects. So it's all in there. And if you do a shuffle of my playlist, you'll get some polka. You'll get, so.
Let's go to a new clip. Let's go to Django Unchained, which is interesting because this is when sort of Quentin changed a little bit how he initially always wanted to work. And this is Ennio Morricone.
Yes. Is it?
Elisa, isn't it?
Oh, yes.
Yes.
Oh, yes.
So we're going to talk a lot about Morricone at the end for Hateful Eight, but tell us a little bit about this, how this got into the picture.
This movie was special in that, Quentin sees movies in his head before he starts writing them, and a lot of times that has to do with music. And this was the first opportunity that I had to have original songs written for him, and it started with.
Because he didn't want that.
No, he's never been, because he doesn't. I mean, he wants to get used to something and see it in his head too. So it started with. Anthony Hamilton and Elena Boynton. They wrote a song for the movie inspired by the storyline, the love story and the revenge story. And they wrote a gorgeous song called Freedom. And I gave it to him on a cassette. I gave it to Quentin, and I didn't hear anything. And then I like, a couple of weeks later, he invited me in and was like, showed me this scene where he was thinking of using it. And I knew that it had cracked open. It was gorgeous the way he used it. And so I started reaching out to songwriters and artists to see if there were, anybody else, if the door's open. So, one of the songs that we got was from John Legend, and he was also inspired by the story. He wrote an incredible. We have a picture. We have a clip of that as well. And the other thing that we do is Quentin and I work in cassette tapes. He's not a digital guy. He won't listen to a link. He won't go to a website, and he also won't. I mean, if you put it on a CD, sometimes it'll just get lost. But cassettes. That's how he prefers to hear things. So I asked John Legend to find a cassette.
Quentin doesn't make things easy, doesn't he?
So he did. So John put it on a cassette and sent it to him, and with a handwritten note, and Quentin fell in love with it. So there was that, and then I reached out to Ennio's my connection to Ennio, and this was a song that they sent in, and a gorgeous use in the picture. I mean, I believe the lyrics have something to do with "I'm still here," and this is the scene. I don't know if you're familiar with the movie, but this is. I don't want to ruin it for you, but this is a scene where she's reunited with Django. It's gorgeous music, and it's a gorgeous use. That beginning when they're, almost choreographed to it. So.
And Ennio is very important, and we'll get back to that because that collaboration really grew for you. But I think we're going to move on to a new clip right away from Inglourious Basterds, which is very interesting piece of music. Their first little clip is just a Swedish connection, which I thought was on Sara Leander. And the next one, The Man with the Big Sombrero, you can tell us why that is interesting in that one. Right, and you used.
Those pieces were actually interesting because there was another scene in the movie that had to be cut for various reasons, but I think it was just for time. But there was a scene where Goebbels comes to the film, the cinema, and he wants to check it out before he approves it. And so he gives her a list of movies that he wants to see, and they're all screwball comedies. So that were goofy comedies. And so there would be a scene where he's sitting there alone in the theater, this awful, stern person watching this, this screwball comedy, and one after the other, and that's why these songs were important in the beginning. So The Man with the Big Sombrero is a song that was from a 1930s movie called Hey Diddle Diddle, and rather than, and it's a funny song in English, suggestive song. And hokey, and so to make it fit into the scenario, we had it translated into French and had a singer, do a 1930s impression of it and recorded it specifically for the film. And since we cut that scene, we still ended up using it in the La Louisiane bar, along with the Zara Leander. And Ik wijn ein Huhn, something like that. That's
well, Sara Leander, of course, was big at the time, but that movie you also used David Bowie, Cat People First, so which is sort of not from the time, which I think is interesting with you and Quentin, that you will take songs that are not appropriate for their time, so to speak.
I mean, and I think one of the things, obviously, that makes him so unique is his bold use of music. He won't edit a song, and he won't force a song into a scene. The song is, allowed to breathe, and he'll often play the entire song, as in Jackie Brown. And I think that's kind of unique about him, and I think the bold use of, yes, absolutely use David Bowie, Cat People. It fit amazingly, and he'll edit the scene to it. So I think those are earmarks of his work too. And to go back to this, I'm kind of jumping all over the place, but to go back to Django Unchained, one of the artists that sent in an original song was Frank Ocean. Amazing songwriter, singer, Frank Ocean, soul singer. He sent in a song, and it was called Wise Man, and it was just gorgeous. But it didn't fit in the movie. There wasn't a scene that was right for it. And so rather than take this big name, a new song that would have been a huge thing for the movie, and just find some place to cram it in, Quentin said, no, I want to respect this man's work. I don't want to, I don't want to just use it for that purpose. And I thought that was, I think that's actually pretty special too about he respects the work. So.
Right. And now we're going to get a little bit into composers and scoring, which is different from this, what we've been talking about with particular songs. Talk a little bit about how you work finding or pairing a composer with a director.
God, that's a whole other seminar we could talk about. But that is one thing that I do too. A lot of times, and it sounds ridiculous, but a lot of times composers and directors need help communicating. Because time is short, and sometimes directors aren't used to speaking with musicians, and and the musician isn't used to speaking to directors, so I kind of allow myself to be there to help.
So you get
shorthand
the script first.
We'll give the script. Well, yeah, we'll give the script to the composers first.
And you choose a few composers that you think are right that you'll send the script.
Yeah. So I'll act as if a casting director, basically, for composers. So because I know all of the composer agents and I know a lot of the composers' work, and I keep abreast of new composers, and it's also a matchmaking kind of session, because you don't want to put someone who's very you don't want to put someone who's difficult with a director that is new and doesn't know how to handle someone difficult. You just need to be able to make sure that they're simpatico and that the music is right. And so one thing that I'll do with a director when I first come on is help come up with the temporary track and the vibe of like what the
And how do you do that temporary track? Do you have someone?
A lot of times I'll use a music editor. I'll work with a music editor. The good ones are worth their weight in gold, because they know and they respect music, and they know how to make score music work and songs work to picture. Because when you don't have the luxury of cutting your film to the song, when the film is already edited and you're adding music afterwards, then you have a music editor that helps. So I'll do that, and use I have a ton of score that I'll use, and it just helps. It helps set the mood and the pace and the tone and it helps them hone down, and it helps them to articulate too what they're looking for.
And the one that you've done, Tom McCarthy's new movie, Spotlight, which is about the Boston Globe's investigation into the Catholic Church sexual abuse scandal. And it's journalist, it's investigation, it's sort of 70s vibe newsroom. Talk a little, what were you looking for? Why did it become Howard Shore before we listen to the clip so we know what we're listening for? That was a large casting session actually, because at the beginning, Tom, the director, thought he wanted something that was more along the lines of Trent Reznor, something that was more mood oriented rather than melody, and.
Well,
when you see the clip, Trent Reznor just doesn't. That would be weird.
Well, it would have been a different kind of a vibe, and the more we looked at it and the more we tried different music on, the more we became interested in following the energies of the various characters. Mike Resendiz is Mark Ruffalo's character has this kind of energy that you borrow from in the music, and we also wanted to have sort of because it was the story about the investigation. We wanted it to have sort of a throwback feel, a 70s feel. It's hard to explain why. It was sort of a, All the President's Men reference.
Well, that genre, the journalist genre, feels very... And of course, this is legacy journalism, even though it was 2001.
Yes.
It's more of a newsroom than what you would find today.
Yes. So that is legacy journalism was our catch phrase for what we were looking for and how to encompass that in music. And so Howard Shore really... and that's another thing. I won't just go to the composer agencies and ask them for a reel. I will ask for specific clips. So I'll go through my own list of what the composers have done and pick what I think is going to mean something to the director. Because if I left it up to the composer agents, they would have their assistants put together the latest reel, and it would not be specific to the project.
Do you remember what Howard Shore movie or movies you
I can't remember exactly because there were some obscure ones. I focused mainly on his piano, on the piano lead, because that was something that I noticed that Tom responded to. Piano seemed to be a lead instrument that he wanted to utilize. So I gathered a lot of that because it was important for the score not only to be evocative, but to stay out of the way a lot of the times. It needed to set the pace and the tone, but it could not be bland in any way. So we needed to really...
Let's listen to Spotlight, and then
on the
other side we'll see.
Are these the clips?
Yes, now
Okay.
the Spotlight. You chose the one.
There is you haven't seen it yet, and I'll only show you a tiny little piece, but there were a lot of montages in this movie of investigation. And this was a couple of different ways that we approached this scene. The first one is the first piece that we received from the composer. The second one is an attempt to bring it back around to the overlying theme that we created, and then the third one was adding more energy and more of that kind of urgency to the theme once we'd honed down what it was. I just wanted to show you kind of one way of how we go through things.
Score is just perfect. I'm really disappointed it's not Oscar nominated. I think you can even hear a little Irish thing coming in Boston.
But this is the first one, and that is actually what this is the first version. We didn't end up using that one, but
you can hear it in the real one too. That it's
This is second one is just is a different melody, and it's getting back to a theme that we used earlier on in the picture. So here's this one.
Ja.
our attempt at turning it around to a theme that we wanted to get more. We felt it had more pathos and more. It helped the scene more. But the last one is the final that we did, and we added more energy to this section.
This was more ominous, sort of that something was.
Yeah, a little bit more.
Yeah.
Well, it's the investigation, and it's the second one.
Right.
In the picture when you finally see it.
Yeah. Okay.
So we added that counter melody, and it really made the scene. It really made this montage work the best for the director. So that's just an example of, how we work with score as well. So music supervision, we work with songs, but we also help work with score because it's, it's important. It's important for the.
But this one, as I was saying, I remember when I saw it the first time. It's perfect because, like the script, it doesn't do anything too much, but it's still there and it's still giving a certain vibe that you don't even know. It's really a good.
I'm glad you said that. That's disappointing that it wasn't up for an Oscar. Well, yeah, because I really do feel like, and Howard's won several Oscars.
Yeah,
but I really feel like he did an amazing job on this movie, and
well, sometimes it's easier to see the ones that are really big.
Yeah,
exactly. The scores that are really big, and these ones that are in. But now let's get to one that's not a disappointment because it is Oscar nominated,
yes.
And I don't know if people understand what a big deal it is that you got Ennio Morricone, age 87, to do the score for Hateful Eight.
The maestro, yes.
And that this was quite a deal to get him, and that you were actually smuggling cassette tapes almost. Tell us how you got him to work on this.
Well, I don't know how familiar you are with the backstory of the Hateful Eight, but a couple of years before we went into pre-production, the script was leaked. And Quentin was very disappointed by the fact that the script was leaked. He felt betrayed, and it was really a big deal. And for a long time, he wasn't going to make the movie because he was upset and he wanted to move on. But when he decided to make the movie again, I brought up, you couldn't even have a copy of the script. You had to go to his house and read it. And then he wouldn't even let you read the last chapter. So one of the first things that we had talked about that I brought up was this might be a great time to work with the maestro. Quentin's never worked with a composer before, really. He worked with the RZA, and he's worked with Robert Rodriguez, but it wasn't really like collaborating with a composer, giving his baby over to, a composer to create new music for it, which was a risky thing for him to do, and that's not something he's used to doing or comfortable with doing. So it was a lot of my saying, you don't have to use it. It's just.
But he must have loved the idea of it being Ennio.
Oh, absolutely,
yeah,
absolutely. But it was a lot of coaxing and convincing, and he wanted to do it, but it was.
And how did Ennio feel about it?
Well, and the other thing is it had to be so top secret. So I had to use a close friend of mine and Tim Roth's, who lived in Milan, who's a translator, because I knew she was in the family and she would never, let
Tim Roth has really done a lot for.
He really has. Tim's like deep in my heart. I actually got married at Tim's wife's
Okay.
family farm.
Well, next time we'll invite Tim Roth also.
Lovely. Okay, so so I had the script translated by family, basically, and then had the translated script without the final chapter, by the way. Just even more secrecy. And then had it sent to Filippo Sugar and Caterina Caselli, who I worked with on Ancora Qui, and who were close personal friends of the maestro. They hand-delivered the script to the maestro and his wife. Ennio read it and was unconvinced because he thought it was a Western and he did not want to do a Western score. He didn't want to go backwards. And his wife read it and she said, "No, this is a masterpiece. You have to do it." So there came time for Quentin came to visit the Donatelli Awards. He was in Italy for the Donatelli Awards and we arranged a meeting for the two of them. And I wish I could have been there. I know everyone wishes they could have been there. It was a fly on the wall just to see how the two of them, because they'd met before, but never had a chance to like sit and just, So they talked about the script. They talked about the fact that it's not necessarily a Western. It's more of a thriller. It's more of, they talked about Ennio's work in in other genres, particularly his thriller genre, and The Thing. And Ennio actually gave Quentin his own personal vinyl copy of The Thing soundtrack because there are several pieces on that soundtrack that were not eventually used in the picture. They were composed for the movie but never used, and so we used a couple of those in the picture too. So they had this wonderful simpatico meeting, and Ennio told him at that meeting that when he read the script, a piece of music came to his mind.
From the meeting.
He told him at the meeting that a piece of music came to his mind from reading the script.
Right.
And it was a piece of music that depicted the movement of the stagecoach, the forward movement, and also had a sense of the ominous goings on that were going to happen.
Can we listen to a little bit of that?
This is The Hateful Eight.
It's amazing. What was
Gorgeous.
Quentin's reaction?
I got to see, because this was another interesting thing. Quentin hadn't heard a thing before going to Prague and being in the recording studio with the maestro and the orchestra, recording the score for the very first time. So he hadn't heard anything. And I was there when he got to hear this first part. It didn't have all the pieces to it even. It was just the strings and some of the percussion. And he was like a kid. He was just like, it was very cool. He was completely, and any fears that he may have had were
gone.
Which was, it sounds like a pat answer, but to see it was pretty amazing.
Well, I think you have a little part in that Oscars. I'm pretty sure it'll be, that's gonna be happening.
I really hope so. Awards for art are, I have an opinion about that, but
But for this
I think for this particular thing, I think for this particular composer at this particular age, who's never been awarded an Academy Award for his for his score, for his scores. He's gotten an honorary.
One of the times you can say he's someone's due.
Absolutely. And it would be a really amazing moment, I think.
I've gone over time, but I have to ask you the last question. What would be the total dream project for you? The director.
Oh, I forgot about this.
Who?
You know, it's a hard one to answer because every director, I mean, I've worked with so many different directors, and every director's project has been like a challenge and interesting, and I've always found something interesting about it. Even movies that nobody's seen, I've found really fun things about it. So, I mean, and there's so many directors that I think it would have been interesting to work with.
But one.
Or Bergman, it would have been interesting.
Yeah.
But I think I love Baz Luhrmann. I think he has an amazing team. I would never, but
That would be
it's
amazing.
hard to, a musical would be fun. An avant-garde musical would be pretty fun. Phantom of the Paradise, I'd love to do something like that again. But, so
Well, thank you so
anything.
much, Mary. I know you're presenting Spotlight, right? Here at the festival.
Yeah.
If you guys want to hear more about the music.
yeah, it's a wonderful movie. It's a very wonderful movie. It's well done and important.
Thank you so much for your time.
Oh,
for
thank
this.
you for having me.
Thank you.
Oh, wow.
Thank you.